The skyline still shines. The lights still come on every single night. The fountains still rise and fall in perfect rhythm beneath the towering shadow of Burj Khalifa. On the surface, nothing looks broken. Nothing looks out of place. But step inside Dubai Mall on a random weekday afternoon and the illusion starts to slip. The stores are open. The music is playing. The air conditioning is perfect. But the crowds that once defined this place feel thinner, quieter, almost hesitant. Staff stand waiting longer than they used to. Taxi drivers wait outside with fewer passengers. Restaurant owners are offering deals that would have been unthinkable just a few years ago. And behind the scenes, conversations are happening in low voices. Conversations that were never meant to reach the outside world. One worker put it simply, "It's not the same anymore." That single sentence captures a shift that statistics alone cannot fully explain. Before we go deeper into this analysis, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. Because what you're about to hear goes far beyond headlines and surface-level narratives. Because the real question is no longer whether Dubai still looks impressive. It clearly does. The real question is whether the engine underneath that image is still running the way it used to. And more importantly, whether the world is beginning to notice that something feels different, not collapsed, not destroyed, but changed in a way that is subtle, gradual, and potentially far more significant. The kind of change that doesn't make breaking news, but quietly reshapes everything over time. To understand how significant this moment is, you have to go back to what Dubai was designed to be. This wasn't just another global city competing for attention. Dubai positioned itself as the ultimate intersection point of the modern world. Geographically, economically, and psychologically, sitting between Europe, Asia, and Africa, it became a place where flows of money, people, and ambition all converged. Over the course of a single decade, tourism numbers more than doubled, transforming the city into one of the most visited destinations on Earth. The vision behind it, driven by leadership like Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, was an incremental growth. It was exponential. Bigger buildings, bigger projects, bigger statements. And for years, that strategy worked almost perfectly. Dubai didn't just build infrastructure. It built symbols. The tallest building, the largest mall, artificial islands visible from space like Palm Jumeirah. Airlines like Emirates Airline connecting the city to nearly every major destination on the planet. Cultural landmarks like Museum of the Future reinforcing the idea that this wasn't just a city of the present. It was a preview of what the future could look like. Celebrities arrived. Billionaires invested. Tourists followed. And for a period of time, Dubai achieved something very few places ever do. It became not just a destination but a global idea. A symbol of possibility, ambition, and engineered success. But symbols are powerful and fragile because the higher they rise, the more visible even the smallest cracks become. And what's happening now isn't the result of a single event or a single mistake. It's the result of multiple pressures building at the same time, slowly eroding the foundation beneath the image. Not dramatic enough to cause collapse overnight, but persistent enough to change behavior, perception, and confidence. One of the earliest visible signals came not from headlines, but from patterns. Tourism flows began to shift, not disappear entirely, but redistribute. Travelers who once defaulted to Dubai started considering alternatives. Hotel occupancy, which once felt almost guaranteed during peak seasons, began to show signs of softening. Flights that were once consistently full started operating below capacity. And while official narratives remained optimistic, projections were quietly adjusted behind the scenes. This wasn't panic, it was recalibration. Then came moments that accelerated that shift. Events that forced the global audience to pause and reassess. When extreme weather hit the city, it wasn't just the disruption that mattered. It was the imagery. A place marketed as hyper-engineered, ultra-modern, and future-ready suddenly appeared vulnerable in ways people hadn't considered before. And in a digital world, perception spreads instantly. Questions followed, not loud at first, but persistent. If everything is built to perfection, what happens when conditions change? But the deeper story sits below those visible moments. Because the real pressure is structural. The cost of living has been rising at a pace that is increasingly difficult to ignore. Housing in particular has transformed from a manageable expense into a defining challenge for many residents. For a city where the majority of the population consists of expatriates, that shift matters enormously. Because when the people who sustain the daily economy, professionals, small business owners, service workers begin to feel squeezed, the effects ripple outward. Spending patterns change, decisions change, and eventually presence itself begins to change. At the same time, the composition of visitors is evolving. The global tourism landscape is more competitive than ever. Destinations across Asia and Europe are offering different combinations of affordability, culture, and experience. Travelers are comparing options more carefully. Value matters more. Authenticity matters more. And in that comparison, Dubai is no longer competing in an uncontested space. It is competing in a global marketplace where expectations are rising and alternatives are expanding. Layered on top of this are environmental realities that are becoming harder to ignore. Extreme heat, once accepted as part of the region's identity, is now influencing how people experience the city for extended periods of the year. Urban life becomes more indoor-focused. Outdoor spaces become seasonal rather than constant. And while Dubai has invested heavily in adapting to these conditions, the long-term implications remain part of the conversation, especially for travelers deciding where to spend time and money. There is also a human dimension that often stays out of the spotlight, but underpins everything. The workforce that builds, maintains, and operates the city is essential to its functioning. Their experiences, their stability, and their conditions shape the reality behind the image. And as global awareness increases, conversations around labor, sustainability, and long-term livability are becoming part of how destinations are evaluated, not just economically, but ethically. Then comes the geopolitical layer, perhaps the most complex of all. For years, Dubai's strategic advantage was its ability to remain open, neutral, and accessible to multiple sides of the global system at once. It positioned itself as a place where different worlds could intersect without friction. But in an increasingly polarized environment, maintaining that balance becomes more difficult. Perception shifts faster, narratives spread wider, and even indirect associations can influence how a destination is viewed by different audiences across different regions. What makes this moment particularly significant is not that Dubai is failing. It isn't. The infrastructure is still world-class. The ambition is still there. The investment continues. But the equation that once felt perfectly aligned is becoming more complex, more variables, more uncertainty, more trade-offs. Investors are thinking more carefully. Residents are calculating more precisely. Tourists are comparing more options than ever before. And when a system that once thrived on momentum begins to slow down, even slightly, that shift becomes incredibly important. Because Dubai's success was never just about growth. It was about confidence. The belief that everything would continue moving upward faster than anywhere else. And when that belief starts to be questioned, even quietly, it changes behavior in ways that don't immediately show up in headlines, but slowly reshape the entire ecosystem. And that leads to the core question. Dubai was never just a city. It was a promise. A promise that with enough vision, enough capital, and enough execution, you could create something extraordinary in a place where nothing existed before. That promise still exists, but it is now being tested by realities that cannot be solved by scale alone. So what happens next? Does Dubai adapt, evolve, and redefine that promise for a new era? Or does it become something more exclusive, more concentrated, and less accessible than the version that captured the world's imagination in the first place? Because the truth is, what we're seeing right now may not be an ending. It may be a transition, and transitions are where the real story begins. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Has your perception of Dubai changed, or do you think this is just another phase in its cycle? And if you want more deep dive analyses that go beyond the surface and into what's really happening, make sure to like, subscribe, and stay tuned because the next story is already unfolding.